And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon in North Carolina.
And I'm David Heller in Oklahoma.
And thank you for joining us here on the Citizen Report. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth, American. So glad you can join us, and so glad to have David back on again today. And we do have a lot to get to about the coronavirus, as well as Tegna, as well as other headlines. But first, we want to begin with some breaking news, breaking just moments ago. Bill Gates has announced he is stepping down from Microsoft board. That's being reported by both CNBC and The Verge. So obviously some big time breaking news and kind of interesting timing, I will say. And of course, in recent weeks, we have seen since the start of the new year, we have seen a number of CEOs or head of companies, or certainly key people of companies stepping down, including, as we just mentioned, Bill Gates stepping down from Microsoft board. We also have Bill Iger of Disney stepping down. He stepped down, some weeks back. Also, Keith Block of Salesforce, AJ Banga of MasterCard, Jim Murren of MGM, Rajiv Suri of Nokia, Steve Ells of Chipotle, and David Abbey of UPS. So, David, a lot of CEOs or head of certainly key people of companies stepping down around the same time, certainly within weeks. And I would certainly say it's interesting timing and kind of turbulent times for these companies, don't you think?
I agree, and not only that, but also this whole coronavirus stuff, which we'll certainly get to in a moment here, is certainly not helping these companies at all, and in particular Disney, especially with them.
Oh yeah.
But I do wonder though if there's something more to this as far as with all these resignations here that maybe perhaps we don't know about right now at this point.
Well, what I'll say is this. There's been speculation, we'll say, those who have claimed to know what's going on, and I try to deal as factually as possible on the Citizen Report, but I will go as far as to say that the timing is very interesting. You have coronavirus. Don't you find it interesting? Just today, we have a national emergency declared by President Trump literally just hours ago, just moments, really. And then, of course, the other day, he came on with a special address from the Oval Office, certainly to signify emblematic of the gravity of it, to say that that flights from Europe are going to be halted for 30 days, except for the UK, which my understanding is there will still be flights from the UK, I should say. And then you also have the fact that because of this, that you have other people saying, I mean, you've got like Tom Hanks saying he's got coronavirus. You've got his wife, or what is it? His wife?
Yes, okay. That is correct. His wife.
So presumably his wife contracting the coronavirus. And I don't know, David. All these resignations, all of these things happening at the same time, just seems a little bit piques my interest. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, dealing in as much as possible, trying to stick to what is confirmed. But I will just say, we will continue to follow this. And there have been those. I'm going to put my reputation on the line here, to go as far as to say, I will just say this, that there have been those who have claimed that there are many sealed indictments. Many. So whether there's a connection there, I don't know. I can't say. But we'll continue to follow, is what I'll say. And beyond that, I'll just defer to David with your thoughts about all this.
Pretty much what sums everything up. I just wonder if this has been an absolute coincidence with all these resignations, because this is something that you don't see at all with so many resignations happening at the same time like that.
Absolutely.
So there is, as I mentioned, there's definitely something to that. What
Exactly.
that is, we don't know for sure.
Exactly. You don't see people resigning during, like, yes, when there's like a financial crisis, like obviously there's precedent for when a bank or a financial company, I'm just using them as an example, that when times get tough, people do resign, leadership changes. That does happen, but that's not exactly what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here is that people were resigning for seemingly unrelated reasons, but around the same time. So all of this is getting very interesting. I gotta say, folks, grab your popcorn because whatever is going on here, it's getting very interesting very quickly.
Agreed.
But to get more squarely to coronavirus, David, I was actually at the nearby Walmart neighborhood market last night, and I was just stunned by the lack of toilet paper, certainly the lack of paper towels, at least 90% of it or so. I mean, people are just going crazy, and I cannot say this enough. People need to be informed of what's really going on, but there's no reason to panic. None whatsoever.
And absolutely. And just to throw out some statistics out there, so far 5,000 people overall have died across the globe over coronavirus.
Yes.
Compare that to about 20 to 50,000 people, according to the CDC, in terms of Americans, just Americans that have died so far from the flu. And here in the U.S., related to coronavirus, only 38 people have died. And yet, with the flu, we didn't shut things down. We didn't stop everything. I mean, the only thing that we may have stopped was maybe the schools, because maybe
if enough sickness at an individual school, yeah.
Right, exactly. But with this coronavirus, I mean, we've lost March Madness. We have lost most, or actually all, of the conference tournaments. We have lost the first 2 weeks of the Major League Baseball season. We have lost pretty much just about the rest of the NBA season. And we have lost the NHL. We have lost Disneyland. We have lost NASCAR today. NASCAR has announced that they're not going to be racing at either Atlanta or Homestead Miami Speedway, which is the next 2 races on their schedule because of coronavirus. IndyCar is not going to be racing their first 4 races. I mean, this whole thing has just gotten blown way out of proportion. And Jonathan, I really believe that some of it has to do with the media.
Oh, absolutely, David. I have said this before on Facebook in particular. And actually, David, ironically enough, I actually pulled up that very post because I wanted to mention the fatality rates so that people have a perspective on coronavirus versus others. But I want to first kind of read to you an excerpt. Or, you know what? Let me just read to you the entirety of my post because I think this is very applicable to our discussion here. So here's my post. Quote, "The mainstream media should be held accountable by viewers for spreading mass fear to the general population. This virus is not good, but not nearly as severe as Ebola, H1N1, etc. Not even close. Of course, exercise normal good hygiene as we should already have been doing, but don't let the media drive you into panic, fear, etc. because they want to make President Trump look bad. The media's tactics will fail. The patriots are in control. In the meantime, remain calm, live your life, and most importantly, trust God." Unquote. So I think the media is playing this up on a level. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a hyping up a collective attempt to hype something up as big as this. I have never seen anything like this. And just to add to that, this also from my post, I posted a picture, kind of a meme slash chart, showing 2019 NCOV, the coronavirus. Now, whether these numbers are exactly the same now as to when this chart was created, I can't confirm that. But this does give you at least a broad general idea of how things are, the perspective of things. Okay. So 3.2% is the fatality rate estimated for this coronavirus. Okay. Now compare that to, for example, people will remember H1N1 in 2009. That had a fatality rate of 17.40%. And then compare that also to Ebola, which had a fatality rate of 40.40%. And then also, just to add one more to that, the 1997 H5N1 bird flu was 52.80%, and SARS in 2002 had a fatality rate of 9.60%. So, David, all of the other viruses I just mentioned have a higher fatality rate than coronavirus. So why is the media getting more hyped up about this than they ever did with those? And certainly, why are we seeing basically things just shut down? We're almost breaking supply chains here. I won't say that we are yet, because we are, I was at Walmart and I could tell that they were stocking things. So obviously there's still a good supply chain going, but why are we panicking about something that's less deadly statistically than even H1N1?
My thinking here is, I think people are just listening way too much to the media people instead of listening to scientists that actually knows what they're talking about. And I think if more people just listen to their scientists, do the things that, these scientists are asking all of us to do, like washing your hands for 20 seconds and, things like not touching your nose or your face, things like that, we're going to be fine.
Exactly.
And to me, as a sports fan myself, there was no reason at all to shut down the entire sports world. Only because, and this was something that came in within the past couple of days, that we had 2 Utah Jazz players. One of them was Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, that tested positive for coronavirus. So just because only 2 athletes tested positive for COVID-19. 2 athletes. We've lost March Madness. We've lost the NBA season. We have lost the NHL season. We have lost opening day for Major League Baseball. We have lost the rest of spring training as well. And we have lost 2 NASCAR race weekends. And we've lost 4 IndyCar race weekends. And on top of that, we've lost the Masters, along with several other major sporting events, have all been canceled just because 2 athletes tested positive. And and as I mentioned before, I think the media has a lot to do with this by spreading fear when they shouldn't be spreading fear.
And this is sort of on topic, almost halfway off topic, but kind of still plays into the fact that what's really going on here. The media, in my opinion, this is such an attempt to make Trump look bad. And like, I was listening to some of the questions being asked at the press conference that was held literally just a couple hours ago, before this recording here. But one reporter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard the reporter basically ask Trump if he's selfish. I mean, is that the kind of questions we're getting from those people? I mean, I know there are a lot of good reporters at a variety of of both mainstream and independent sources, they do good work. But there are those who are really activists who shouldn't be in those positions asking these questions because they're
Exactly.
not appropriate.
Exactly. And also, another question that was asked during that same press conference was a reporter asking about, quote, taking responsibility, directing at Trump. And I'm just sitting there going, what are they thinking?
Well, they want to make, as I've said it before, but they want to make Trump look bad. I don't think it's working. They probably know it's not working, but they're trying anyway. And it's just, just got to sit back and let this all play out. But until this blows over, I guess just expect more of the same from the media, from much of the media, I should say. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, as a sports fan, I guess I'm just going to have to find a new hobby to do because I don't have March Madness this year. I don't have the NBA right now, NHL. I don't have the next 2 weeks of NASCAR either. So
yeah. It's just this. I do think President Trump was right to declare a national emergency because that is how you unleash funds to deal with this. So I think, and it gives him some more powers. So I think that was justified personally, but I'm not talking, when I say overreaction, I don't mean by President Trump, but I mean squarely on like these, I don't know, local governments that, for instance, like, what was it? State of New York declared a 1 mile, I don't know what they call it, but it's basically a 1 mile zone where large gatherings are banned. First of all, constitutionally, you can't do that, but they're doing it anyway. And it's just, people are freaking out and it's getting ridiculous. And apparently the symptoms aren't really much worse, if worse, than maybe the flu or a bad cold.
Flu, exactly. And yet also on top of that, we've lost, several cities have canceled St. Patrick's Day parades because of this.
Yeah.
And we've lost several movies as well because of this. Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, the two most beloved game shows, are going audience-less because of this. Several syndicated shows like Rachel Ray and Tamron Hall have gone audience-less.
Live with Kelly and Ryan as well.
All that have gone audience-less, and most likely we've lost The Price is Right because The Price is Right can't function without an audience. So
that's going to be interesting. I didn't even think of that one. And then also you got, I think Dr. Phil is going to be taping without an audience. And then well, that's the only one that other than The View. Of course, I don't care about The View personally, but there's that too.
And then also think about Judge Judy and Hopinch as well. So we're just seeing mass panic, and we're just losing shows. We're losing sporting events for no reason at all.
Exactly. It's just
should not be canceled. We just all need to take precautions like wash our hands. Everything should not be canceling events. Period.
We should have already been doing that anyway. And now explain this to me. Why was it that I have no issue buying food, and yet you can't buy toilet paper? I mean, seriously, people. Why are they more concerned about that than they are making sure they have food stock, as it would seem?
Excuse me. And I do apologize to viewers if I'm having these coughing fits. I'm still having them right now.
All right.
But anyway, my point being is this: we're just seeing overreaction. Way too much of that. That shouldn't be happening. We just need to stop with this overreaction. Take precautions, and we're going to be fine.
Exactly.
We're not at the end of the world, and unfortunately, Jonathan, people are acting as if this is the end of the world when it's not.
Well, I mean, let me throw this in too, because now say what you want about Megyn Kelly, okay? I know Megyn Kelly's, she's who she is, But I do think that it's worth mentioning. I do think it's worth mentioning a tweet that she posted back on the 11th, and that is, quote, "I'm so frustrated right now that we can't trust the media to tell us the truth without inflaming it to hurt Trump, that Trump has misled so many times we no longer know when to trust his word, that even I as a journalist am not sure where to turn for real info on COVID." So even though she has an anti-Trump bias, even in this tweet, she does at least acknowledge the fact that the media, in her view, can't be trusted to tell us what's really going on with coronavirus.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just no way. There's just no way to really fully summarize all this, because it's just it's hysterical. I think personally, in 3 months, this will be history. I don't see how. I mean, this is already. I think we're already seeing almost the worst of it now, and we'll just continue to see people go, the grocery store, do whatever they're going to do, but
Right. Oh, and I forgot to mention this too. Here in Oklahoma, we've only seen maybe 2 or 3 cases of COVID-19 here in our state, and we're not seeing that community spread. And yet today, school districts like Oklahoma City, Western Heights, and Shawnee, as well as several, all those school districts in the Oklahoma City area were closed today because of this.
I mean, it's just nuts. I know locally UNC Charlotte's transitioning to online-based classes, and my former college,
and also all the major Oklahoma colleges, including my college that I go to, Rose State College, they're all going to go online after spring break.
Right, and I'm not sure. I can't. At this moment, I do not know of anything like that at Liberty University, which is where I currently attend, albeit online. But I will say my former college, Gaston College, which is a community college where I got my degree in broadcasting, they've also not implemented any kind of drastic measures, like moving to online only kind of stuff. But we'll see how this all plays out. But worth mentioning, UNC Charlotte has again gone or is going to transition temporarily to online based classes, even for those otherwise in person. So it's just a lot to follow. People, I will just say this: there's no reason to panic. Understand what the media is trying to do here, and instead of being manipulated into fear, because that's what we're seeing with this mass buying at Walmart and such. And I'll say this: people were pretty calm there. In fact, I'll just throw this in too. I actually briefly spoke to a fellow customer, another shopper, and we were both in the paper towel aisle, and I basically said something along the lines of, and we're just trying to stock up as normal for our house. We're not, buying, panicking and buying. And he was agreeing with me. There were shoppers there that were just trying to buy their normal stuff, and yet there were those that just were buying like crazy. I have seen pictures online. I don't know if these are legitimate pictures, but I've seen pictures of people stacking these paper products on their carts. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, people, please calm down. If you've got to, turn off the media. And you know something? Here's a good mental exercise. I know we need to get to Tegna, but I'll just throw this in too. Here's a good mental exercise. When you feel like the media is making you freak out, okay? I would suggest look outside, look at the wildlife. Do they look freaked out? No, the squirrels and the birds are just going about their normal business. They probably don't even know there's such a thing as coronavirus. And, that should tell you if the birds and the squirrels aren't freaking out, because they can sense, for example, when a tornado's coming and things like that. If they're not freaking out, why are we freaking out?
Right.
I mean, and I'll just say this to kind of cap this off before we transition to talking about Tegna. as I said on my special bulletin earlier this week, instead of letting the media manipulate you, think for yourself, think logically, understand that there are things that we don't really know there are things going on behind the scenes. I do think, personally, I can't confirm this entirely, but I do believe there are sealed indictments. Whether that's related to all these sudden resignations in recent months, I can't confirm it. But understand, regardless of what it is, there are things going on behind the scenes. And we will see how this all plays out. But understand this, regardless, trust God. Go open up, if you have a Bible, or if you don't, go online, read Psalms 91. When you've read it, read it again and again, and however many times you have to read it, and you'll realize you're not freaking out anymore. You're calming down, and you claim that as God's promise of protection for you. That way you can, make good decisions, not based in fear. Just go about your life. Wash your hands as you normally would, but otherwise try to live your life as normally as you can. That's all, and that's what I've got to say about that. David, do you have any final thoughts about coronavirus?
That's it. I mean, I think you just summed it up right there. Read, Psalm 91 as you mentioned. Do the things that health officials tell you to do, and just live your life.
Yeah.
Or in other words, as what my mom told me this week when we were going out to dinner, just stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean,
just stop. Just the roses.
Slow down, enjoy life, enjoy the simple things in life. Understand God's in control. It's all going to be okay. We're fine. We're going to be safe. It says it.
End of the world either.
And in Psalm 91 it says no evil shall befall you. So, there you go. So just don't fear this supposed pandemic, which I think was irresponsible on the part of World Health Organization, in my humble opinion, to call it a pandemic, because that poured fuel on the fire. That didn't help anything except make people freak out. So just think for yourself, be at peace, and go about your life. And with that said, let's transition now to Tegna, because we do have things to talk about, and I would say more extensively than we did last week, because this show is also getting pretty good. And David, why don't you go ahead and say what you know about that?
Okay, so right now, for those of you that missed last week's show, as of last week's taping, Gray Television, which is the owners of 93 different TV stations throughout the country, and it's based in Atlanta, which owns WBTV in Charlotte. They also own, within my region, they also own KWCH in Wichita, and KYTV/KSBR in Springfield, which serves Branson, Missouri, which is 4 hours to my east. And so, Dim and Apollo, which owns Cox, which in turn owns KOKI and KMYT in Tulsa, also based in Atlanta, has approached Tegna, as of last Friday, and have made offers to acquire the likes of WNEP, WFAA, KHOU, WWL, KFMB, WBNS, and WTHR. And now, as of this week, as of yesterday or day before, Byron Allen has also made a $20 share offer, or $8.5 billion, even though there was another report that said $4.4 billion. But anyway, he's offering about $20 a share to purchase Tegna as well. And on top of that, there was some news today that came in that reads in part that Standard General wants to file, or actually is going to file, a proxy statement with regards to Tegna, which essentially, Jonathan, let me put it this way. This essentially means that they're going to ask other shareholders to join them in help, join them in nominating those 5 people that Standard General wants to bring on to the Tegna board.
Well, I think this is getting very interesting, and I think the chances have gone up yet again that Tegna will be bought out or taken over, either one. Tegna in its current form, their days are numbered, and I say good because, frankly, I don't think they do much of a service to the promotion of good journalism at this point, because they like to promote social media style newscasts. And I've said this before: if I want news, I'm gonna either turn on the TV to a channel that I am willing to watch, or I'm gonna go online to a trusted news source. But if I want social media, I'm gonna go onto Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. They need to understand, when you're on TV, you should be putting out good quality newscasts, and they have not been doing it. They instead been trying to revolutionize things, and in my opinion, it hasn't really worked out that well.
Exactly. And also something else that I wanted to mention as well. Those offers, Jonathan, have come at a time where the stock market has basically been crashing down because of the coronavirus concerns that we talked about earlier in the show. So this is in spite of everything that has been going on. And yet some people, I've noticed on other sides, have basically said that, oh, nobody should be, buying Tegna right now because the stock market is bad. All I gotta say is, ha, 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 ha. Because
when the stock is lower, that means you get more, more value for your dollar when the stock market goes back up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And on top of that, Tegna is in a catch-22 situation here, because right now they're basically fighting to not get hostility taken over hostile style, I should say, by Sue Kim, which is Standard General. And for those that don't know who Sue Kim is the one that owned Media General, that was part of Young Broadcasting before that, which Young filed for bankruptcy about a decade ago, was sold eventually to Media General, which Media General then merged with Lynn, and then ultimately got bought out by Nexstar back in 2016. And so that's a little background on him. And so what he's wanting to do is basically take over Tegna and basically restore everything that made stations like WFAA, King 5, WWL, and stations like that so special for so long that Tegna over the last several years have destroyed. But the problem is for Tegna is they don't want that to happen, but yet they're now getting offers, as I mentioned, from companies like Gray, Apollo, and Allen. So basically, Jonathan, at this point, Tegna has no choice but to sell. Whether the stock market say no or not, and whether some people like it or not. Because, that's just the way it is right now at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it is my hope that whoever buys the stations will allow stations to do what works for them and not require a standardization deal across all stations, because there are some standardizations that are okay. For instance, Nexstar, because for one thing, they allow a variety of graphics packages and an even larger variety, I would say, of music packages. But not just that, though. The journalism is a little more autonomous with these, and what I mean by that is that with Tegna, they want to standardize everything, like even down to the segments, to the point that, like for instance, what's their morning show in KHOU? Isn't it called H-Town Rush?
H-Town Rush.
I mean, what the
and
heck are they thinking calling it that?
And KTHB is now called Wake Up Central. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's right. THB 11 in Little Rock. Yeah. That. Oh my goodness. I'm just. Ugh. I hope that these stations are allowed to go back to doing their own thing, because I'll tell you what, like WBNS in Columbus, Ohio, what I would call a premier, like they are a gold standard of a TV station in my opinion, and they were just forced to adopt what I call the Tegna-itis or Tegnitis, graphics, music, all the rest. And it does, in my opinion, it's not a good look for them. And so just all the more reason these stations need to go back to doing what works for them. And, once if that's allowed to happen, then I think TV news will be better for it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And here's the thing. It's starting to get to the point now, Jonathan, that I think we could see more significant movement related to Tegna over the course of the next couple of weeks, regardless of what the stock market does. Because this is just getting more and more interesting. And the more pressure Standard General puts on Tegna, the more it's going to allow other companies like, for instance, Scripps, Meredith, even potentially Hearst, to join Gray, Apollo, and Allen in this bidding war for Tegna. And odds are starting to get more and more likely that Tegna is going to get sold. There's no way Tegna is going to make it to 2021.
I agree. I think an announcement is on its way. It's going to be forthcoming sooner or later. And like you said, I personally don't see how they make it to 2021. Certainly not to 2022. 2022, I think Tegna is going to be a memory at that point. If that's assuming they're not taken over, because if they're taken over, then it's a little bit more uncertain as to how the form of the combined company would take. But if they're bought out, I think Tegna is going to go bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll keep following this about Tegna, and we'll keep you apprised of that as well. Before David breaks away for me to do my headlines segment, I do want to just briefly mention in the weather side of things a couple of headlines I just came across as we were talking. First, from WATE Channel 6 in Knoxville at 6:25 this evening, published this alert. Just in, a tornado was confirmed from last night near Whitley City, Kentucky, by a survey team from National Weather Service, Jackson, Kentucky. It was an EF1 with 100-mile-an-hour winds that occurred just after 10 p.m. So I assume that's referring to last night. And then also from KFVS Channel 12 in Cape Girardeau market also has this. The National Weather Service in Paducah said preliminary information shows 2 EF0 tornadoes in southeast Missouri on March 12th. They said one was located 6 miles southeast of Elsinore, and the second was 10 miles northwest of Poplar Bluff. So we had some action yesterday with tornadoes, and obviously now, David, we're starting to get into that season of tornado activity. And folks, in the coming weeks, we're going to be producing a special on how you can prepare for severe weather, namely tornadoes. So be looking for that in the coming weeks. We'll start working on that before too much longer. So, David, any final thoughts before we go to my headline segment?
That's pretty much it.
Alrighty. Well, David, we will see you again at the end of the show. Thanks for joining me again today. And thanks for staying with us here on the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon. Let's get you some headlines here for today. And actually, this just came out a few moments ago. This is from actually Bloomberg.com, ironically enough. The headline reads, Fox Business host Trish Regan on hiatus after virus comments. Now, apparently, and I'm just now learning of this as I'm starting this recording, she said this is according to her Twitter, she said, quote, "We've reached a tipping point. The chorus of hate being leveled at President Trump is nearing a crescendo as Dems, or Democrats, blame him, and only him, for coronavirus, a virus that originated halfway around the world. This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. Hashtag Trish Regan." And apparently what's being said right now is she's being, in essence, sort of, her show at least is being suspended or put on, in the wording that they use, put on a hiatus right now. And of course, they kind of sidestepped it, didn't really come right out and say that her show's being suspended. But it's quite obvious the Democrats are crying foul over these comments. And I might just add that as she was making these comments, the words coronavirus impeachment scam were running in a box as a graphic on the screen. And also in the lower thirds, it reads, Dems politicize coronavirus. Now, apparently the Democrats are upset about this. The liberal establishment is. And in my opinion, I don't think she said anything wrong because, frankly, they are politicizing this. They are making, trying to capitalize and take advantage of this virus and hype it up to try to somehow pin this and blame this on Trump. And of course, in recent days, we've also seen the likes of, I believe, Ilhan Omar and others basically accuse people of being racist for even mentioning the fact that it came from China. I mean, it's just absolute lunacy on the left right now, if I may say. So hopefully Trish Regan will get her show back at some point. But I thought before getting to our other headlines, I thought I'd mention that. So obviously, right now, and I'm of the opinion that ever since I would say the last couple of years, I would say the Fox News has been, and of course its sister network, Fox Business, has been really kind of the management, shall we say, has been pushing it further and further to the left. And in my personal opinion, I don't trust Paul Ryan for a New York Minute. And of course, he's as far as I know, at last check, he's on the actual board of the new Fox Corporation, the new entity of sorts, the holding company, the head parent company of all this, the Fox company. You know, you got like the Fox television stations, you got the Fox Broadcast Network, Fox News, Fox Business, of course, Fox Nation, and the websites associated to them. But all of that is grouped together by Fox Corporation, and Paul Ryan is a member of that. I don't trust these people like Paul Ryan at all. And so, again, I do hope that Trish Regan will get her show restored to the airwaves. And I think it's kind of interesting that instead of having her show, a pre-recorded interview show called Objectified will run in its place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So, obviously, this is concerning because I do believe that she should be able to say that without facing consequences because she's just making an assessment. And in my view, a fair assessment of that. So let's get some more headlines for you, though. We'll of course keep watching that. This reminds me, of course, of what happened with Judge Jeanine. Thankfully, she was allowed to return to the airwaves after she questioned the loyalty of Ilhan Omar. Once again, in my opinion, it was justified because, again, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and I mean, asking if Ilhan Omar's loyal to America by Judge Jeanine, after the things that Representative Ilhan Omar has said, I don't think there's any problem with at least questioning. And you have a First Amendment. Of course, you don't. The network is not yours. Of course, the people who own / run the network, they're the ones who have the right to say what you can or can't say. I get that. And of course, there's contracts involved and everything else. But at the same time, if you're going to claim to be a place where free opinion, freedom of opinion is championed, you should be allowed to have fair discourse. Now, I find it interesting. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just got to say this too. Of course, we saw. I mean, unless you had your head in a sand, in recent days, you saw there was quite literally what's her name, Donna Brazile, basically telling the Republican National committees, the National Party of the National Republican, on the national level, the Republican chairwoman, telling that woman, Donna Brazile, telling Ronna, the last name slips my mind. I want to say McDaniel, I think McDaniel, but the chairwoman, regardless of the Republican convention of the party, Donna Brazile told her to go to hell, to put it quite bluntly, and she was not forced to apologize. There was no, I don't know of any consequences that came to her. It was briefly kind of sort of in an implied fashion addressed later on, but ultimately it by all appearances she was basically given a pat on the back after once that was all said and done. But if you on the other side, see, Donna Brazile's a Democrat, but if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you are actually pro-America, it appears that there's you can't just say what you want to say from that point of view. And I'll just say that I'm a conservative. I'm a pro-America. And of course, most importantly, I'm a Christian. I am a Christian. And apparently there's not as much that's allowed to be said from our point of view than there is from the left on Fox News. So that's pretty concerning, but we'll continue to follow that. But now let's get to johnbwellsnews.com again. I highly recommend that website. If you haven't already, please go to that website. Check them out. A great alternative to the Drudge Report, in my opinion. And just a few here. This is from March 13. So this is pretty much current here. House passes FISA reform bill. Barr endorses it days ahead of deadline. That from the National Sentinel.com. From CanadaFreePress.com. Now's the time to wake up before it's too late. Marxist politicians, academics, and entertainers are doing their best to destroy the most formidable object standing in the way of a globalist, communist government, the American culture. The WashingtonStandard.com. On heels of news of Hillary Clinton email deposition, Judicial Watch sues State Department for texts between Clinton and Huma Abedin. Folks, it goes back to at the start of the show when we had that breaking news about there being the sudden resignation of Bill Gates and how it all times into this coronavirus situation. And you've had a lot of resignations of key people from major, not just these little companies, but huge companies like MasterCard, Chipotle, and Disney. Disney is, I mean, it could pretty much be its own country. It's such a huge company. And these kind of people are resigning within months. And Bill Gates is just resigned from Microsoft, from the board of Microsoft, a company he helped to found. And all of a sudden he resigned. Something's up here. And I'm telling you, folks, as it pertains to Hillary, something's coming too regarding that. And we'll continue to follow that. But continuing on here, from WashingtonExaminer.com, House Democrats reject GOP amendment adding Antifa to domestic terrorism prevention bill. Well, of course. I mean, the Democrats, if they were allowed to say if they knew they could get away with it, they'd just say that the Antifa's on their side. They just don't seem to be willing to outright, fully denounce Antifa, which is a terrorist organization. There is no question. And it's just astounding to watch this take place in the House of Representatives, the Democrat majority in the House of Representatives. From the nationalsentinel.com, buried from Trump Tower meeting, translator telling FBI no collusion. Well, of course, we already knew that. We already know the Russia thing's a hoax. I mean, it's ridiculous. From globalresearch.ca, Congress tries to sneak through dangerous spying bill under the cover of the coronavirus crisis. You know, folks, I heard something else too, that Nancy Pelosi was trying to do something regarding abortion with this coronavirus. I mean, these Democrats just will not, even when it comes to the coronavirus, something like a virus, the Democrats still just will not give it up. They absolutely are an abomination, I must say, to this country. Those with the keys to power, if you will. From westernjournal.com, report, Pelosi tried using... Well, there you go. This is exactly what I was just mentioning. Report, Pelosi tried using bill aimed at stopping coronavirus deaths to fund baby deaths through abortion. I mean, this is so disgusting. I mean, abortion is murder 100,000%. There is no question. It is murder from the point of conception. That is, I mean, that is something I just will not negotiate. It is murder, and yet you've got people like Pelosi who are using something that should be fully bipartisan. It should be fully, our country should be fully united against the virus. Okay? And again, as I said, the virus is far less severe in terms of fatalities, percentage-wise, out of those who contract it, compared to H1N1 even. To put it, of course, it's hard not to remember H1N1. I mean, that was a huge outbreak. And even now, even with this, the Democrats still trying to push their agenda with trying to promote this genocide of babies. And it's disgusting. It really is. It really is. But continuing on here, from the epochtimes.com, U.S. launches retaliatory strike on Iran-backed group after deadly attack. From bigleaguepolitics.com, district judge releases Chelsea Manning from prison. From freebeacon.com, the fight against socialism isn't over. Bernie Sanders isn't a relic. He's a preview of things to come. From libertyheadlines.com, pro-Second Amendment advocates sue Connecticut over ammo limits after Sandy Hook. From zerohedge.com, Erdogan blasts Nazi Greeks. The word Nazi is in quotations because that's a quote from Erdogan. Blasts, quote, Nazi, unquote, Greeks for denying refugees access to Europe. I mean, in other words, I guess Turkey's now going to call you a Nazi if you want to actually stand up for your own country's sovereignty. I mean, how ridiculous. How about your own country how about your own country house these refugees, Erdogan? Or, I know, you don't want them in your country, but you want them in other countries so they can crater their society and their government, but you don't want it in your own country. Well, that should tell you something, folks, right then and there. From thenewamerican.com, Omar ties knot with Democrat consultant, both denied affair. From trueconservativepundit.com, big tech's syllabization busting bias. Just a few more here. LibertyHeadlines.com. Grassley. Schools with Confucius Institutes should be briefed by FBI on threats. From LouRockwell.com. Time-restricted eating, a powerful way to prevent dementia, by Joseph Mercola. By the way, folks, I think Dr. McCullough is pretty good. If you haven't checked him out, Mercola.com, I think is his site. He's got a lot of good information there. You might want to check him out. But continuing on here, from RedState.com, FCC Commissioner calls out Adam Schiff over his secret subpoenas may take action. You know what, folks? I'm just going to click on that real quick because that's the first time I've seen that. And the FCC, unless this is a typo, that would be the Federal Communications Commission. I'm going to guess it's not the FCC, but I'm just looking here. Bear with me one moment, folks. The FCC. I wonder why they don't explain what the FCC is. Brandon Carr. Who is? Okay, yeah, that is the that is a commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission. Okay, so Adam Schiff has apparently gotten in some trouble with the Federal Communications Commission regarding these secret subpoenas. I think that's fantastic because we all know that what Adam Schiff was doing was absolutely ridiculous, trying to usurp constitutional rights and due process, trying to bar Trump from having any ability to defend himself when it actually mattered. Before it actually reached the point of the trial for the impeachment. Okay, let's continue on here a little bit. Unprecedented situation. Norwegian Air suspends 4,000 flights, cuts half its employees. And just a couple more here. 3.1 magnitude earthquake hits New York, felt across region. Kratom, which the government has been desperately trying to ban, contains powerful anti-coronavirus compounds. I'm going to spell that for you folks. That's Kratom. That's a plant, apparently. The government's been desperately trying to ban that, and apparently it can actually counteract coronavirus. So why in the world are we even trying to come up with a vaccine when there's apparently already a plant that's known to combat this type of virus? I mean, folks, we really live in some weird times. Another primary and another spectacular victory for Donald Trump. Great. In Michigan primary, Donald Trump earns 3 times the votes of Barack Obama in 2012. So that tells you that's another measurement of how enthusiastic people are for Trump in the primaries, in the Republican primaries. Just one more then. FBI's Russia collusion case fell apart in first month of Trump's presidency, memos show by John Solomon. So, how ridiculous. You had Robert Mueller trying to keep this. He was trying to keep his own little special counsel thing alive. And apparently, even in the first month of the Trump's presidency, it was already, even before the special counsel, already, the thing was already debunked about this Russia stuff. And yet, how long did they keep this thing alive? 2 years or something? Something like that? Certainly well over a year. How ridiculous is that as well? But all these headlines, folks, at johnbwellsnews.com. And of course, I highly recommend John B. Wells' program, Caravan to Midnight, which you can find at caravantomidnight.com. All the aforementioned, I do not get paid to say. I just truly think that they do good work at Caravan to Midnight, and John B. Wells is just a really good broadcaster on the side of good, on the side of Americanism. So with that said, folks, let's rejoin David Heller as we close out the show.
Well, I hope those headlines were a little bit helpful, at least with filling in some more, getting you a little more apprised of what's going on in the world this week or today. And David joins me again to close out the show. And David, why don't you tell viewers where they can find you on Twitter so they can go follow you there?
They can find me on Twitter at David_Heller9. It's just David _ which is separation between my first and last name and the number 9. That's where viewers can find me on Twitter, and if they want to submit tips, my DMs are always open. So feel free if you have any tips that you'd like to send our way. Feel free to DM it to me or to Jonathan, and we'll just discuss it and see if it's worthy of talking about it for the podcast. And if it is, we'll definitely mention that.
Yeah. And so absolutely. And folks, please go follow David Heller. That would be awesome. And you, of course, can follow me at the Jonathan News on Twitter. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and that's the Twitter handle, the Jonathan News. That's how you can follow me on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. We also want to tell you about our website, thecitizenreport.weebly.com. And there you can see our podcasts there as well. And we hope you'll check that out. And if, of course, you have tips, that's another way you can send it to us on the contact page there. And actually, I forgot to mention one thing about coronavirus. I do want to get that in very briefly before we close things out and wrap things up here on the Citizen Report. So my parents actually went into the doctor's office, and of course, my dad works for U.S. Customs, and they were actually forced to put on masks because people there are so paranoid about coronavirus. And, because apparently somebody came through the Charlotte airport that later tested positive for coronavirus. Well, my dad didn't come in contact with that person, but they still, were paranoid about that. Well, just today, just moments before I came on the air to do this podcast recording, they actually, somebody at that office, and may have even been the doctor, actually called the house here, called and talked to my mom to apologize for that. So actually, I think in hindsight, at least in that case, they realized that they overreacted. So David, kind of interesting footnote to include there about the coronavirus.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, and yet this is another example of just way too many people overreacting to the coronavirus that shouldn't be.
Right. And I think the doctor's office, they realize that, yes, they're in their minds being precautious. They probably said something to that effect, that they're just being precautious. But I think it also, at least subconsciously, they also understood that they're overreacting. So on that note, folks, I just wanted to include that as well. I meant to include that in the coronavirus segment, but I'm including it now. So on that note, thank you for joining us here on the Citizen Report. Of course, this newscast is produced by New Shannon Media, and you can find New Shannon Media online at nsm4Christ.org. Check that website out as well. I haven't updated it too much in a while, but I'll be trying to get that updated a little bit more down the road. And thank you for joining us here on the Citizen Report. For David Heller and myself, Jonathan Shannon, have a great weekend and go enjoy life. Go live your life. Don't be fearful. Trust God and just live your life. And on that note, we will see you back here on the Citizen Report. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.